Good morning, everybody, and welcome to We Eat Stories for Breakfast. I'm Adam Jeffrey Rossi.
I'm Chandler Bramstead.
Welcome in, everybody, to another, I was going to say hot and spicy episode, but like none of them have been either of those things. So, one breakfast was kind of spicy. I put a little hot sauce on the
Ooh,
avocado taco
a
one.
little
That was
dab
after I
of
tried it
heat.
the way that she told us to eat it, though, because I do, I didn't ruin the ranking. So,
Yeah, you do have to have
um,
an honest ranking.
speaking of
Speaking of
which,
rankings,
I'm gonna have you start. We have to rank Braxton's breakfast, which is sausage and biscuits and gravy. And I need you to go first because I know where this is going.
yes,
So
absolutely. We should. You're going to be a little bit more impartial than I will be, so I will
yeah,
happily go first. Even though
yes,
I will fight for this ranking with my life.
yes,
There are very few things that can knock this sucker out of where I'm going to rank it. So here's the thing about biscuits and gravy, the B's and the G's. It is a southern staple. I'm not even
right,
from the South, but I am
right,
from Missouri, which is close enough to the South to
sure,
have stolen the love of biscuits and gravy. It is one of my favorite breakfasts that my dad used to make. It is my best friend's favorite breakfast that my dad used to make. When my best friend got married, the day of his wedding, actually, it might have been the day before his wedding, I made him and all of his groomsmen biscuits and gravy,
it's awesome.
and they ate it all up. It's the best meal you could ever make. Now I am upset that we didn't get a rundown from Braxton
Yeah,
or from his mom about any sort of. I put in quotes for the audio listeners recipe. There are no recipes for B's and G's. Good biscuits and gravy. You make that gravy from scratch. Usually you're starting with a roux and then building up from there, adding your
right.
flour, your milk, and thickening it up. My dad always would do bacon gravy. I personally do prefer sausage
Me
gravy,
too.
so
Me too.
that is a little tick up for Braxton's favorite breakfast. I will give a number. To be fair, if we're going to be out of 10, I will say 10 out of 10. I
Okay,
want to
all
say
right.
12 out of 10. In fact, I actually want to say biscuits and gravy, specifically sausage biscuits and gravy, is so far above the scale that
It broke the
that
scale.
that it breaks the scale and it's completely imbalances our rating system. It may be on a god tier, incapable of being touched for quite a while. But for the sake of ranking and math, I'll give it a 10 out of 10.
Feel bad. I feel bad that this is such an early on thing that we had. So did you do so when you had it? Is it just the sausage gravy and biscuits, nothing else?
When I eat sausage, biscuits, and gravy, I do well. Let's see. Usually, I will put like eggs on the side because there's
That
like a
was gonna be
palate
my
cleanse. Like you
yeah.
can't have an entire meal of cake. Like you have to have something before it or something to like set the palate and set. So I will normally do biscuits cut in half, sausage gravy over it, some eggs on the side. And then for some reason, I don't know why, like I try to drink coffee or something if I need it, but for some reason, the best drink that goes with biscuits and gravy to me is 2% or whole milk, nothing added.
Interesting. That is interesting. I would never guess that. Um, I'm giving a 9 out of 10 only because of the way that Braxton said it was. He said it was biscuits and sausage gravy, nothing else. If I'm
Mm,
allowed to have my over easy egg on top of it, then I'm going to 10 out of 10 because I that's amazing. It's one of my favorite breakfasts too. But Braxton said it was just biscuits and gravy, so I knock 1 point off for it because it's not. I want another flavor in there amidst all that savory. But I mean, it's so good. And my roommate is actually an incredible cook. She's vegan, and I think that a lot of not every person that is vegan is a great chef, but like most people that I know that are vegan or gluten free end up being good cooks and bakers because they have to be creative with what they make and
hmm
how they make it. So she made mushroom gravy actually. That was
Interesting.
very, very good. So I'm going 9 out of 10 on this one. It could be a 10 if I'm putting eggs on top because I
Well, at the end of the day, if we're going to average our two scores, which average is score plus score divided by two, so you have 9 plus infinity is
it
infinity, divided by 2 is still infinity.
is still infinity. It's a smaller infinity, but it's infinity.
But at the same time, there is no such thing as a smaller infinity, and yet it is.
That's it. No, no, no. This is there is. I was reading. I'm reading a book right now by Matt Haig. It's called The Life Impossible, and He's one of my favorite authors, and he in this there's a chapter about there was a mathematician who was committed and died in a psychiatric hospital because he discovered that there are different sizes of infinity, and they all thought he was mentally unstable because of it, and they had to commit him, and he died in a psychiatric hospital. I will go find it and read it, but
No,
I had to
I
put the book
believe you.
down. I had to put
You're
the book
gonna,
down because it blew my
yeah,
mind.
yeah. My brain is stretching only because now I'm trying to comprehend. I feel like infinities are not meant for human comprehension.
Yes,
I'm just gonna say something that either most people are gonna be like, "That sounds stupid," or if you're an intellectual like me, if you have big brain curiosity like me, what if there's so like if I mean there's dimensions. What if infinity's in the third dimension, but then there's in depth to an like what if infinity is size, but are we considering its depth? And
that's a
maybe a
good point.
larger infinity is deeper. Who knows?
She didn't. They didn't go into too much of a description about it, um, because they were using it as a like Haig was using it as a device to explain the unexplainable, being like you don't realize like up until the moment that you know something to be true, everything feels impossible. So that's I mean that's what it's. But anyway,
So then that does put our ranking at a not true affinity. So there is still, I guess, a seat if we both rank something infinity,
and infinity.
or actually not even that. I just have one of us has to rank it infinity, and the other has to rank it higher than a 9.
When he who shall not be named until he's on the episode joins us, I want his breakfast to either be the one that goes infinity, infinity, or I want it to be the worst thing we've ever had.
Here's the thing. I will be honest in any review once we do inevitably have this person on our podcast, and I just have a feeling that it will be a breakfast that we are unable to cook in our realm. I'm sure the ingredients will be solely
He's gonna be the one.
found.
He's gonna be the one that says like go to McDonald's and get a McGriddle. It's gonna be so
Rocks
great.
or is yeah, get a McGriddle, but yeah, that's it.
He's like,
That's it.
I'm too busy writing 100 books. I don't have time to make breakfast.
You know what? You know what his true response would probably be? Whatever my wife cooks is my favorite.
That's probably that does
Or
sound like something he would
he's
say.
like, I love to cook and feed my family, but whenever she cooks, that is
It's
my
the
favorite.
best. That's a good answer.
And
Um,
love, and to be fair, love will trump all. So
yeah, it always does. Yeah, before we get over to our interview, something that I have been sort of ruminating on lately is I don't know if you're familiar with the band Sammy Ray and the Friends. Uh, they recently just came out with a new album, and my best friend's wife, which is so funny because when we started this podcast on the episode 0, I called her my best friend's fiance, and they've since got married. But my best friend's wife, she's also one of my best friends. I owe a lot of my new music taste to her because she'll just send me something. She sent me this song from their new album called David, and I think I listened to it 10 times in a row, straight through. Um, and there's some like David and Goliath, David and Giants allegory in there. It's just the way she sings some of the lines, like the sort of the rhythm and the rate of it is just so encapsulating of yeah, it's hard for me to describe, right? That's what music is for sometimes, right? Is the
yeah,
indescribable. But I listened to it like 10 times in a row. Highly recommend it. It's a beautiful, beautiful song. And there's a line from it where at the beginning it says, "If I can cast away the giants in my head, I just sit back and cast a line." And I think I repeated that like 100 times. And there's this whole thing about like giants, you not being a giant or you being a giant. And then at the end of the song, she like ties it back in where she says like, he said, "I'm taller than I thought I was, more than Mama said I would be. Guess I must be a giant also, for these giants all too fit inside of me." And the way I read the song is about like giants are maybe like these demons that live in that you live with, and you're worried that you're the bad one, and these giants, and it's like they all live inside you, and it's about like living with it and knowing. Yeah, I don't know. I think that I'm gonna ramble a little bit if I keep talking. So it's just a great song. You should listen to.
I'll listen to it as long as our listeners do, which they will, and we know
They
they
will.
will.
Yeah.
For me, I have like one very specific. It's not necessarily like a story I've been thinking about or ingesting, but it's something I guess I witnessed, which I think was a very beautiful form. I will I will preface the example is a TV film. It was a single episode of a limited series on Netflix. But context for this episode. Well, I'll give you context. I'll give you context first, because I think some listeners may know if I revealed the episode or revealed the series. They may know the episode I'm talking about. They may not. I'm sitting on the couch. My lovely fiance, love her to death, excited to spend the rest of my life with her, is watching this Netflix limited series. It is like a true crime reenactment, I guess, series. And I'll just go ahead and say it's called Monsters, the Lyle and Eric Mendez story, I believe. She's been watching this while I've been at work. She'll watch it when I'm busy doing other things, playing D&D, recording podcasts. So I'm not watching the series. This particular day I get home from work, she's watching it, she's invested, she wants to keep watching. I'm in the middle of a good chapter in my book. So I sit down and I think I'm getting close to the end of my book. And I'm sitting down on the couch with my back to the TV. And the audio there, it's an interesting like dialogue. And I see it when she just starts a new episode. And I look and I see, for those who want context on which episode, I believe it's episode 5. I think it's called The Hurt Man. I look and I see a man, I have no idea who he is, sitting behind a table in what looks to be a visitation room in a prison. And I turn and I see that and I go, okay, cool. I can kind of hear them talking. It seems like a lawyer or someone has come in to see if she wants to take their case or to get more information. Keep reading my book. About 5 minutes later, I hear something interesting. I look up again out of curiosity. It's on the same shot. Oh, interesting. They probably cut back to it. Okay, keep reading. 5 more minutes later, I look back up. It's the same shot. And I go, they're probably going to, I think towards the beginning, I was like, they're probably going to slowly push in before they cut to something. So I was looking back to see if they were doing like a tracking shot in. Basically, throughout the length of this episode, I'm looking back while I'm reading my book and starting to notice ever so slowly, the framing of the shot is getting tighter. It is a very slow push in. And at a certain point, I realize this entire episode is going to be this one shot simultaneously. And I don't know I'm not listening to the dialogue. I'm just fascinated at this time by the production of it. And what I find absolutely fascinating about something like this series, I know there's plenty of cuts, there's dramatic, not necessarily reenactments, but scenes, there's drama, there's lighting, there's set design. This is one set design. Prisoners in blue. There's a single red sign up above his head on the wall pretty far back that says danger or something like that. And then this lawyer who is blonde with like a blush or peach like suit on totally does not fit in the scene. So I'm noticing set design, costuming is very intentional but minimal. But just thinking about the technicality and the technical work of a 30 to 40 minute constant tracking shot in, adjusting focus on the camera, making sure the framing is right. You're not going too fast. You know you're not going to go too far so that you have to backtrack. In addition to the acting is done in one take. To me, there's like the two sides of like technically impressive shot to do, because film is meant to be done in bursts, and to go this far outside the medium is like you have to be really technically sound to make one shot work for a whole episode.
Yeah.
And that's like technicality versus creativity. But it's also interesting to me how that film or video like piece, which would normally be made lively and vibrant by contrasting shots and angles and depths of field and different characters back and forth, there's that lack of change. And in that lack of change highlights something more important to the story, which is this one person and like what he's going through or his experience. And I think the entire episode is kind of him retelling his childhood. And I think about how his parents, like he loved his mom, but how like much he was talking about how his dad was a monster. And so it was just this slow push in and deep dive into his history. And he started off very, very like shallow, vague responses. And by the end of it, it's like really tight on his head. Like maybe tighter than I am in the shot here for our Patreon watchers. And he's like fully just giving all this information to this lawyer. And it's just this beautifully like, I can't speak for the rest of the series, but that one episode was absolutely beautiful. And I think the acting was pretty impressive.
I also love I'm a sucker for long shots. I love them. Like the movie 1917 is one of my
Mm-hmm.
favorite movies because I know it's not really one shot, but a lot of them are absolutely just really really long takes, right?
Yes.
Um, and I love that kind of stuff. And I mentioned Daredevil, and that TV series is famous for one shot fight scene takes.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of big ones in each season, so I love that. I'm absolutely going to be looking at that. We need to create a running Google document of all the things we talk about and like who mentioned them and like what it is, so that we could share that with our listeners and be like, this is a running list of like the things that we talk about on the show.
Absolutely. And just a side note, you may have been seeing into the future when you mentioned that you said Daredevil. So,
I do think I would,
but that is impressive.
but I'm seeing into the future right now when I say next up is an interview with Nica Albertson. She's a singer, songwriter, musician, and
And
is
a
an
dear friend
interview.
of mine.
A dear friend of Chandler's, yes. I had my friend, now he has his friend. We have two of
Well,
them.
we have two friends. Well, without further ado, let's
Here's
dig
that
in.
interview. Do we want to do a vocal warm up? I'm
La
just kidding.
la 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 la. Li, 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 li.
Okay, today we have Nica Albertson, is how you pronounce it, yeah?
Correct.
I just saw that last name for the first time. So, welcome to the show, Nica. Just really quick, if you want to introduce yourself first before we get to the questions, maybe really quickly, like what do you do, that kind of thing, how you know Chandler, and then we'll get into the questions.
Thank you guys for having me. Yeah, my name is Nica Albertson. I'm a musician, and I met Chandler. We were working together in production. I work as an audio tech, and I'm a musician on my days that I'm not working. Yeah, singer-songwriter. I play guitar, I sing, and excited to share with Chandler and Adam a little bit more about storytelling through the
Now,
songwriting format.
from our pre-chat, I knew you were a songwriter and musician. I didn't know you were a singer too. So maybe at the end of the episode, we'll get you to sing.
It's
Sure, I do have
only if you're
instruments all
comfortable.
around me. Oh my god, it's like
Absolutely hate putting people on the spot.
it's almost
I feel
like it's what I do as a musician. So
It is
no,
funny.
you're totally good.
That is actually so funny because I remember used to talking to my friends at conservatory where like
Hmm.
you'd go home or you talk to your friends and like my family would be like, Do a monologue for us." And I'm like, "No, it's a holiday. I don't really feel like working right now."
Yeah, 100. Like I showed up to an event the other day where it was a lot of people that have known me for a long time,
Sure.
and they didn't know I was coming, and they went, Nica, if I knew you were coming, we would ask you to sing. And I was like, well, I'm really glad you didn't know I was coming then, because I just want to relax today.
It's also so funny because I feel like most people are thinking it's a positive thing, right? Because they're
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
"We like you singing. Oh, we want to see you do this piece." Like, it's a nice thing, but nobody ever thinks of it as we decided that this was going to be our
yeah,
job, and you're
yeah,
asking us to work.
right.
The question is, do you ever get where like they get excited for you in the moment, like when you've come to them to sing, but you're like, well, if you want to see me sing, like I do perform or I'm on Spotify, like you should show your support when I'm putting myself out there intentionally.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's huge because it's so hard. I mean, so many indie musicians, like you are struggling to get 100 people to show up. But then when you're in a room of 100 people, suddenly, you're the most interesting person. So it's just a funny kind of dichotomy there where you're like, oh, I'm glad you're interested in this. Actually, here's 4 dates that you can show up
Yeah.
to see it intentionally if you'd
I've
like.
done that. I've done that before. My uncles will be like,
Yeah.
Just give us some Shakespeare." I'm like, in a couple weeks, you can come see
Yeah.
it."
Hey, come show up. You'll see it. You'll see it right
Make you
there. And it's
wait.
going to be great. Right now, I'm hungry.
It'll be worth every moment of your wait.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Nica,
amazing.
we're very, very glad that you could join us today. We've got 6, maybe 7 questions for you about storytelling. Let's get into it.
Yeah. So our first question, I mean, we hear a little bit about you from your introduction of yourself, but we want to go a little bit deeper about Nica and about like Nica's story. So our first question, pretty simple, unless you don't want it to be simple. is what is your story? Up to your interpretation what that question means, but tell us your story, Nica.
Well, you said my name a few times, so maybe we can start there. My name is Nica, which is an Iranian name. My mom is sought refuge to the US from Iran when she was in her early 20s and married my dad, who's a white American man. And they chose the name Nica. It means goodness, and it's Iranian. And for her, also reflected the culture that we grew up in the Baha'i community, which is a minority religious community started in Iran. So that's a big part of like the origin of my story of who I am and where I begun, you could say. But yeah, Nica is the name itself like means a lot to me. And so especially when I was coming into starting to put out music and I was debating, do I develop a stage name? Do I have a moniker or something else? I decided to stay true to my name, and that's a huge part of who I am. But I started writing songs when I was about 10 years old, and my dad, I'm very fortunate, is a guitar player. He went to Juilliard and he teaches now in the DMV, which is District, Maryland, Virginia. And so I grew up in a very musical household, and when I was 10, I really gravitated to the guitar as a songwriting tool. Something about it being very fluid with, just physically, you're not sat at a piano, which that was my first instrument, but a guitar is mobile. And yeah, so I started writing when I was 10, and they obviously were not good songs because I was 10 years old, but I just kept doing it and kept doing it. And when I was 21, I released an album, but songwriting's always been a big part of who I am, and especially in my Iranian Baha'i household, music was like massive. I was singing all the time. I mean, we were just joking about putting me on the spot, but that was like the epitome of my childhood, was being put on the spot, to sing and like lead music. And I don't know, I think a huge part of my story is I've always been like a bit caught in the middle of things. Being the child of a now citizen, but at the time a refugee, like I saw a lot of suffering around me. My cousins came to the US, a bit after the revolution in Iran, and they were struggling so much to acclimate, to learn the language and everything. But like, I was born here. I've had the immense privilege of being very, I'm American, but witnessing that suffering. And then many of my dear friends went through a lot of suffering. There was a lot of loss in my childhood, friends losing their brothers, fathers, mothers, and that's where I turned to storytelling, to songwriting. It was like the avenue to process. So yeah, I think, that question is really interesting, and I don't know, it makes me think a lot about like, it is very connected to storytelling, which is the theme of, today's conversation, because everything comes back to the storyteller and what they want to reflect. I don't know, I think my story is very much rooted in my family and in my culture and in the very many identities that intersect, the word intersectionality. So yeah, that's a little bit about who I am.
Thank you, first of all, for sharing that. Something
Sure.
that you touched on that I'm sure we'll delve deeper into later on in the questions is the idea of storytelling as a grief processing, like a grief processor, which I think
Mm-hmm.
is very beautiful in a way. But something I was going to say is I struggle with the idea of like, my parents are this way a lot, where it's like, oh, you were meant to do this. But like,
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of ways, things do end up being that way. Like you just said, you grew up in a very musical family, and that was
Mm-hmm.
how you communicate. It was your communication format. And like I think about me, who became an actor director, of like me and my sisters playing make believe all the time in the backyard, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like in a way, it does end up making sense, right? Because we are what built us or nurtured us when we were younger. Um, I think I think the problem I have is like just because you were meant to do something or something is that doesn't have to be your career or anything. But I
Yes.
do think it normally makes sense, which I think is cool.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because 2 hours before joining this call today, I was with a friend and we were talking about, destiny versus choice. And
Yeah,
I think at the end of the day, the answer is it's something in between because nothing's black or
good way to
white.
say it.
But yeah, there's so many things that are kind of seem like a given or seem like a natural. But it's also like what you have the motivation to choose and to take ownership of. Did Chandler
Right.
just drop off?
Yes. I don't know what happened.
Sorry to stop the conversation. I'm like, wait.
No, that's okay. That's okay. So it's still technically recording. Let me text him really quick. That's okay.
There he
I want to
is.
make sure. You good, bud?
Yeah, I just sent you a message. My internet just stopped. It just stopped.
It just
And I was
stopped.
like, I wonder. I
Huh.
assumed it was you at first. I was like, oh, Adam stopped.
It's
talking.
still recording.
Yeah, yeah. So it should re-upload
So we're still
everything.
okay.
That's really weird. Like
Yeah, it
everything
says
cut
it's
out.
still uploading.
So we're okay. That's okay. We'll just
Nice.
move on to the next question and we'll edit that out. So let's get to the second question here. So we talked about, a little bit of your story, but now interested in how different people who use storytelling in different ways describe this. So define storytelling to you or a story.
Stories. So let's start with a story. So I think my understanding of a story is it's an experience that is reflected outwardly. I always think of storytelling as you are taking an experience and like putting a mirror to the world and being like, I'm reflecting out to you something that I'm hoping you'll see yourself in. And like, I'm going to do a quick aside. I used to watch this. Vlogs are very interesting because they're a form of storytelling, but it's very like literal, very like, here's what I did, here's me right now. But I used to watch this one vlogger a lot. Great personality, great human being. And at some point he was like, I need to stop vlogging because I'm vlogging every single day about me vlogging. There's no story. It's just this like Groundhog's Day. So like that made me think about how storytelling, there needs to be experience, there needs to be processing. Like you mentioned grief earlier, that's a huge theme. Heartbreak, love, people love to talk about love. But a story is like an experience, and it's this blend between technical and creative. I think a lot of people have technical abilities that are really sharpened, but they don't know it, like an oral storyteller, like your uncle who is a great storyteller, makes the room laugh. He has a lot of technical ability. He's very witty. He can, recall things very vividly and sharply, but he's also creative and he's heart to heart. And, that's just an example. But yeah, I think, a story is mirroring an experience, and then storytelling is finding the medium to do that, where, I don't know, at least for me, the goal is like connection with people, and the goal is like reaching others. But I know plenty of storytellers where that's not even part of their intention. They're just there to express,
I'm sure there will come a day where we have a guest that repeats a description, but I'm always so excited when somebody has an almost complete different answer from the other guests prior, right?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Everybody's had such a different description of it. And
I'm so curious.
I love the idea of reflection, not just in the literal physical sense of like, it takes a person, like let's take it literally, like to a mirror. You have to look into it. It's reflecting you back to you, but it's also like the thing that's not you there, and so you're looking at yourself, but it's not like there's a very I don't know, oxymoronic thing about that to me. But so I like that idea, but also reflection in the internal sense, right? Metaphysical of thinking about what you're thinking about and feeling, I think is also really cool.
I like how you committed to what you see storytelling as, but then right at the end you did something that I find very interesting, with almost like a throwaway kind of remark. You broadened, like, at least my understanding of how you view story versus how broadly you view what storytelling is versus how you choose to see it for you or express it for you in your storytelling. Because you mentioned, I don't know, someone else may, like, that's not how all artists, some other may have different intent. And I think it's interesting that you bring up storytelling with intent compared to storytelling with connection. I don't know why you keep getting thumbs up. That might be me.
I was just about to say, I love it the way that you're
I don't
crossing
know
your
why.
arms, and the Apple iPod thinks that you're doing a thumbs up.
Yeah, you guys also the peace sign. I mean, I don't know if people are watching this episode, but it's automatically putting thumbs, and that's really riveting.
All of
really
our
adding
three
a lot.
Patreon subscribers are watching.
All three.
Oh,
But yeah,
love you
I find
guys.
that really cool how how you are talking about this connection, which,
Yeah.
again, talking about reflections, it was part
Yeah.
of I think a little bit or similar to an answer that I gave, which I'm enjoying how different everyone's answers are, but also
Yes.
how similar the core is. And I mean, a
Yes.
little selfishly, like, oh, that's kind of what I said. Oh, we have this similarity. Oh, we see that a little bit the same way. That's really cool, because then it's connecting me to you as two different storytellers and kind of this, I don't know. But that's just me. Our viewers may feel the same way, or they may hate that every week I say, hey, I kind of said that, but you said it better.
100 episodes in, Chandler's still saying, that's kind of what I said.
It's close.
That's kind of. I mean, that is exactly like it's this dance between the individual experience and the collective experience, and there's overlap and there's separate. It's a perfect little beautiful Venn diagram, you know. Like,
Yeah.
and that's what storytelling is too. Like, and there's so many. I mean, in our interview chat, we were talking about like all the different mediums, and that completely changes the definition, because I'm talking about storytelling through the lens of, I mean, you asked earlier who I am. I'm such an empath, I can't help but think about what other people think. You asked me a question, yet I am just thinking of the multitudes of possible answers, not even what. So I have to constantly reel myself back in. Okay, Nica, what do you think? What do you believe? But also part of my answer is what I witness in the world. So yeah, it's all connected, you know? Yeah.
I definitely didn't say that,
Good
but
answer.
I did think it, so half credit on that one.
I kind of
All
said
right, moving
that.
All right, I'll
moving
give you
on,
half- I'll
so
give you
I
half
stop empathizing with literally everybody intentionally. I think, I mean, the topic now of grief has come up a couple times. The topic of love has come up, or like stories that, I mean, you kind of mentioned it in your response with connecting and how you view storytelling, and you brought up, at least thematically, emotions, and so I think that fits pretty well with our next question. Like, what is a story to you that is not a story that you've told, that has provided or provoked an emotional response, whether that be grief, love, joy, fear?
I've been very hyper fixated on the film Perfect Days, directed by Wim Wenders, or he's German, so it might be Wim Wenders. It's about Hirayama, who it is such a mundane, in a beautiful way, movie. And the reason, I'm just going to kind of jump to the end before I give the details of the film. The reason I keep resonating with it and the emotional response I get with it is just like peace, because I've been so overstimulated recently with like just my phone and the games I'm playing and the TV I'm watching and, you know, works on the computer. I'm just so overstimulated, and I watched this film and it really brought me back, and it grounded me into the little beautiful mundane things in life, like the sound of leaves crunching under your feet, you know, the feeling of flipping through a page of a book on your thumb, you know, that rustling sound. And the film is just so slow and so gorgeous, and throughout time you learn about this main character, Hirayama. He's a man in Tokyo who, you know, is cleaning toilets, and I won't spoil the main aspect of his character that we discover, but the whole purpose of the film is to discover that this man has a background that is not what you see on the surface when he's, you know, doing his daily job of cleaning the toilets in Tokyo. And just the way it's done and like everything about it is so breathtaking that the story is so simple, but it doesn't matter because the way it's done is gorgeous. And that's why, like earlier when you asked about what is storytelling, that's why I say it's like this blend between technical and creative, because the story doesn't even have to be this mind-blowing everything everywhere all at once mindfuck of a can I curse? Is that okay?
You can now.
I should have asked. Okay, well, you can bleep it out if you like. Of a story, it's like also the way that it's done. And I've been rewatching it every week because I just need it. Like, it's a reminder. The story that is in, I'm talking about film, I guess, right now, but the film called I Saw the TV Glow. I won't get into it. That's a whole podcast of its own, but it explores, you know, expression and identity in such a like incredible, mind-blowing way, kind of on the opposite end of Perfect Days. And I bring up both of these as my examples because they've just made me so reflective, like we were talking about earlier, and they've made me feel so grounded. And I think it kind of goes back to me being such an empath. I eat up the stories that are tie back into my life so much. So, yeah, those are two stories that have really struck me because they've had some sort of element that I take in then to my day to day. So, yeah.
That it's so in line, like those answers are so in line with your definition of story as being the reflective. So you gravitate towards and you feel things more towards works of art that ground you in yourself and let you, you know, change your reflection maybe a little bit too.
It's funny, I didn't realize that till I said the word reflective just now, and I was like, oh yeah, because you highlighted it, like I didn't put two and two together.
Just
But
you're
yeah, those are two,
consistent.
yeah. Yeah, there you go.
That's good.
I just like that.
Have either of you,
Um,
yeah. Oh,
Go
go
ahead,
ahead.
I
bud.
was just gonna say, I just like that you brought up a movie. I am a sucker for film, and I'm sure everyone can understand why. But it's an.
I typed them both out so I can look at
I
them
did look it
later.
up on my phone,
Yeah,
and
you
my
totally.
ADHD brain took a
Oh,
screenshot of the title with the picture of like the lead actor, and maybe I will
Yeah,
remember to look at my photos one day to see what things I've screenshot. But we'll see.
well,
you'll get a memory.
I think it's interesting that I saw the TV girl as Phoebe Bridgers in it. Isn't she a musician?
Yes. Yeah, she has
What's
a
that?
role in the film. It's not like one of the lead roles, but when she shows up, she actually is in a band in the show. Like
Oh, okay.
they enter a club, and she's there with her band, and it's just this like epic moment
That's
where the
cool.
audience is like, ah! I saw it in the theater too, which is a great experience.
I'm
Yeah, yeah,
surprised I haven't
she's.
heard of this because this is an A24 movie, it says.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no way!
So I'll have to check it out.
Yeah,
Um,
it's gorgeous.
Speaking of, you mentioned stories providing emotional responses in you that we just talked about, but are there stories, whether they're, songs that you like that tell a story, or film, or TV, or book, or whatever? Like, what's a story that you find yourself referencing a lot in your everyday life?
I want to pull up the lyrics to a song. So there's a musician. Her name is Haley Hendricks, and
Hmm.
uh, my answer is very, very recent, like as of the last few weeks, because I think my answer to this question is ever evolving depending on what I'm, consuming and
Of
partaking
course.
in. But she just released a song called Seed of a Seed. And I think the words are so clever, and I keep finding myself like saying them to people because a lot of the people in my life are going through a lot of change and a lot of growth, a lot of like here's the word again, reflection of their ancestry, reflection of uh, the ways that like we experience growth through generation as well. And the song "Seed of a Seed" is really clever and really really gorgeous. And so the first verse goes, "If we don't know better, well, did my parents know better? No, but they tried." And then there's verses in between, and at the very end, she says, "If we don't know better, well, did my parents' know better? No, but they tried." And it's like a syntax thing where it's very simple and gorgeous, and it goes back to the title of the song, Seed of a Seed. So like, a seed is grown, but there was a seed before it that was planted in that same soil that grew a different fruit. And there was a seed before that that grew a different fruit. And they always say like when you're gardening and you plant a certain kind of seed or crop or whatever it might be, that's going to impact the nature of the soil, and it's going to impact what you can grow in it next. And some like farmers, for example, will give their I don't know the right terminology here, but like the soil like a break one season or one year. You guys might know better about that topic than me, but I think that's what she's alluding to here. And I just thought it was really silly and witty and a cute way of expressing that by the first verse, the opening. Did my parents know better? No, but they tried. Did my parents know better? No, but they tried. And
Do
it just made me
you?
laugh so much. Yeah.
I first of all definitely gonna listen to that. Also, there's actually a playwright. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Carol Churchill. Um, she's a British playwright that she's most known for like all of her things are about abuses of power. It's very non-naturalistic techniques and
Mm.
exploration of like sexual politics and feminism and stuff. But she has a play called Not Enough Oxygen, and all of um, the dialogue of some of the characters is repeating a lot of things, and so I like that you hone in on the syntax of it. This is a uh, definitely a tangential question, but
Mm.
I'm really interested to hear your opinion is, do you find as a musician that you notice things like syntax in art and storytelling more than your average person probably does?
I would speculate that I do.
Hmm.
My favorite band of all time is Pine Grove. I don't know if either of you know Pine Grove. And they play around the syntax so beautifully, and it's tied to rhythm. You know, the rhythmic choices that the drummer and bassist make is connected to the lyrics. And I'm always, because like right now, at the moment, I'm recording another album, plug. And as I'm recording them, I'm rewriting some parts of the song because I'm realizing it doesn't translate to a recording the way that it does live. And I'm constantly thinking about like the syntax of the lyrics and then what am I doing musically to support that. So I think to answer your question, I am listening for it or looking for it in art because I'm always trying to like glean that inspiration. And I was never the best in English classes in school, but so it doesn't come completely natural to me. So I do have to like kind of pay attention a little bit harder so that I
Sure.
can learn more. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of psychological studies about repetition and things
Yeah.
like that being very prominent in media that sticks with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, obviously, as artists, we know that syntax is incredibly important. As somebody who's an actor and loves Shakespeare, I know syntax
Mm-hmm.
is everything. Um, but I found that interesting that you honed in on that, so that's cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah, your reference was like a perfect reference, like a perfect side by
Uh,
side.
I'm telling you, if you guys haven't read Carol Churchill, like her stuff is crazy good.
Mm.
I saw them do this, and not enough oxygen. Is I saw it at Point Park. They were doing a one X festival, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like this dystopian futuristic thing where there's a couple in a tower block hot in a tower. That like it's just so interesting. Like it's hard to describe fully, but it was originally first broadcast on I think BBC Radio in the 70s. But great
Interesting.
play, so you should check it
You
out.
say it was a
It's also one of those ones that like there's a lot of plays that like I had a teacher in high school that we would listen to Shakespeare plays instead of reading them because Shakespeare and plays in general are meant to be heard. They're not meant to be read. So it's like one of those things where you should get together with like three of your friends and read it out loud because it's pretty cool.
Hmm.
or maybe we should get together with three of our
Yeah,
friends.
I think we're three
We'll do a
friends right
lot.
here.
Maybe
So
so. We're trying to think of like content that we could do that would be for Patreon subscribers. Maybe that's one of
yeah,
them. Is that like when we
totally.
have discussions about art and pieces of works of art with all of our guests, we have like sub episodes where we absorb one of those things together and we
Yeah,
discuss it. I think that's cool.
yeah. Engage with it in some interesting way. That's great.
I, for one, would love to do a radio drama. Little read throughs.
I feel like I was born to do a radio
You,
drama.
well,
My
maybe.
uncle used my uncle likes to say that I have the face for radio. So
Well, that's mean.
It's for radio.
I've been
my
I've been
feelings.
told that
Aw.
as a joke.
Oh
That's
no.
not a unique comment. I've heard
Yeah.
that a few
No, I
times.
know. I know. I
And
know.
also, it's wrong. All of our Patreon
Thanks, bud.
subscribers know it. If you're audio listeners, you just have to trust me. That comment is just false. It just is.
We can say whatever we want for the audio listeners. We're getting
They'll
off
never
track,
know.
Chandler.
Sorry.
Hone it in.
We are getting off track. We'll stop talking about a bunch of good stories, but Adam and I will. But Nica, we do need to hear what you think makes a good story. Good can be subjective, good can be objective. We've heard you mention a few examples, but what
Yeah.
overall, in your opinion, or in your mind, from your perspective, not what you think other people would say, we need Nika's opinion. What would you say makes a good story?
Soul, sincerity. I mean, like, so I studied music and I also studied geography. I'm never gonna really use that degree, but fun
Interesting.
times.
Oh, that's
I thought I was,
fascinating.
yeah. I also studied GIS, which is a tool. I thought I was going to do urban planning, and I recently just moved out of. This is related, I promise. I just moved out of DC, and I love DC very, very much. But one thing I'm noticing as it gets more quote unquote developed is, and we're seeing this in all cities in the US, everything is more gray. everything is more uniform. There's so many Whole Foods. Like there's no story being told in the design of the city. There's no soul, there's no sincerity. Whereas like for example, when I go visit Baltimore, yes, everything is more run down. Yes, everything is more lived in, but that's exactly what gives it the soul. And like when I'm walking through these neighborhoods, I feel like I'm witnessing a story in the city. And so I don't know, that kind of example is what I first thought of for some reason. I'm not really sure why. Maybe it is the geography part of my brain being like, I'm here. Um, but it's the soul, it's the sincerity, and like earlier I mentioned this dance between technical and creative. And again, technical, I think we have a connotation with that word as in like you need to have training to have technical ability. I think many of us have like technical abilities naturally that we might not put name to, but it's there. Like again, a good comedian technically is a good storyteller. They know how to draw you in. They know how to do a good, callback to an earlier moment. They're witty, they're attentive, they're flexible. Those are technical skills. But then creatively, they're speaking from their heart, usually, at least the comedians I watch, telling stories of experiences they've had. Again, back to this idea of like the mirror, they're reflecting out a story, and the audience is looking at that mirror and going, oh, I see myself. That's funny. So yeah, a good story like has all those components. And yeah. And when I was thinking about these questions, I was thinking a lot how, like, again, I'm coming from the songwriter's perspective, even though I've talked a lot about other media. I think to kind of push myself out of my comfort zone, I've done that a little bit. But as a songwriter, a lot of these questions are also very tied to, like, so much of storytelling is, like, commodified, capitalized on, and then we lead into, like, what is a bad story? Often it's stories that are made with the intention of, like, selling, what makes a good hook, what's going to get the biggest audience. Sometimes it works, but a lot of times it doesn't. And that's why I said the word soul, because like usually there's no soul in commodification. There's no soul in capitalism. But yeah, those are my thoughts.
What I find interesting, you didn't make this parallel on purpose, but to me I see a very huge parallel in your geographical examples of cities. And when a city has soul, it may be lived in or run down. But in a lot of major cities in the U.S., I can't really say a lot of major cities in the U.S. because I only live in one major city in the U.S., but trusting your experience and just kind of, I don't know, a feeling in my gut, this uniformity in development is, to me, it just seems like this, I don't want to say like attempt at unification or being strict, but it's like trying to streamline and industrialize a part of the human experience that's not meant to be industrialized. And I see that that's being reflected as well, specifically from a film and video perspective and TV perspective in a lot of streaming services. It feels like there's a very big shift from film and TV to content, using content intentionally as it's not really a strong story that's meant to have a message delivered. It is something that is being created and produced in order to be ingested. And I see that a lot with the nature of like limited series over film, or like reboots of old things. They're safe decisions, but it's story decisions being made around money, around gain and profit, as opposed to story decisions about risk and the human experience and soul. It's taking the heart out of it to take the risk out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there are good artists and creators that will work on HBO's reboot of the Harry Potter story, but like, we don't need that.
Yeah. There's so many already.
That's like the prime example of it, right? Is just that happened. I was watching. Tuesdays have become because the restaurant at work has closed on Tuesdays, and the movie theater in town is $5 movie day. Although it's $6 now, and I'm upset about
inflation.
It. But yesterday we went and saw the second Joker movie. And I have so many mixed thoughts about it. But it felt like a movie that was like, oh, we made the first one was so popular, let's just make another one of these. Whereas the week before that, I saw an animated film, I believe it was DreamWorks, was The Wild Robot. Um, and it was like such a simple movie. It's a story that I've heard many, many times, but I cried like 4 or 5 times because it just felt so soulful, the way that you just said, like with the soul. Like I
Yeah.
could feel the people who created it and the voice actors like felt something for the story and the characters, right? I'm not suggesting that the people in the Joker movie didn't, um, but one of them got incredible amount of publicity. The other one, every time I tell people I saw the Wild Robot, they're like, "What's that movie?" Right? So there is that interesting, like you just said, the capital and the capitalist
Hmm.
mindset. That's
And
interesting.
I'm realizing as you guys like share your insights on that question too, is like the way that I'm thinking about this question is maybe less so about the story itself, but the way the story is told.
Yeah,
Because
that's a good point.
I don't think I have many
The
feelings around
syntax, you mean?
the
If the
syntax.
syntax is
Perhaps,
improper.
mayhaps I might suggest the syntax. Can we actually only say things as though we're in Shakespeare for the rest of today? That'd be great. Thank you.
Of
But like,
course.
yeah, I think that I don't think I have many feelings on what makes a good story itself. I think it's more about how that story is being shared so that we can all partake in it or at least witness it. Because again, not everything has to be, not all art and storytelling is like this collective thing, but oftentimes it ends up becoming it. But yeah, I think as long as that story is, like you just reflected back, coming from the soul or whatever word you might want to use, it's the way that you then share that through your medium that is really important. Because I find that really good, again, back in the songwriting world, really good songs that are telling the story effectively are often tying together all the components of a song: the melody, the lyrics, the rhythm, the chords. All of those are married together intentionally. And that's why I keep bringing up Pine Grove. I love that band so much because the words and the melodies and the rhythm, they're always moving together. They're always in harmony. It's not just like random, like automatic drum machines that are looping and somebody playing a little ditty over it, which is also great. I love plenty of music like that. But there's a different feeling to listening to music where it's all super intentional. And when I try to write a good song, then I'm trying to do the same thing. But honestly, it's not even necessarily intentional in the moment, as in like my brain is thinking, okay, I'm talking about I have a song that is a little silly. It's called Enjoy the Rain or Flood the Basement. And the quick context is
I
my
love
dad
that.
is such a catastrophist. When it rains, his first thought is, oh my God, the basement's going to flood. I need to go check right now. And sometimes I think that he manifests those things because he's so catastrophic in his thinking. It's drizzling outside. It's going to be okay. So I kind of created this silly little dichotomy of you're either going to enjoy the rain or you're going to flood the basement by just kind of manifesting that. And we actually recorded the song together. He has a guitar solo and it was a very fun
Wow.
time. But when I wrote it, the first line goes, enjoy the rain or flood the basement. Basement, the melody's going down. And then when a new idea is introduced, the melody changes. When there's a new phrase, the movement in the song changes. And when I wrote it, those things weren't necessarily like a conscious thought I had, but I think the more that you write, the more that those kinds of mechanisms become natural. Yeah, just an aside.
I love that.
It
That's
brings
great.
up, and this is another tangent question, not one of the core questions. I was almost going to say it as a statement and then realized, who am I to make statements when I could simply ask questions?
Hey, make statements. You're
Is-
Chandler.
Is a story in the plot, in the action, in the thing that it's about, or is a story, like you're describing the importance of, in the delivery or in who we're sharing with, how we're sharing it, the intent behind the sharing? Is the story in what has happened, or is the story in the sharing? I want to leave that with, it doesn't necessarily need to be answered. If you have an answer you feel inclined or pulled to answer.
Well, it's like for my listeners, your listeners, not mine, your listeners who have watched I Saw the TV Glow, if anybody has. I'm sure people have because it's very buzzing right now. It is about gender. The film is about gender, but the way it was told, I'm sure you can ascribe so many other levels of meaning and connection to it. And that is like the mechanism that it was told through. That's the way that it was told. It was told in such a way that people can watch that and connect in so many different ways. Other facets of identity. It doesn't just have to be gender. And to me, that's like what made that such a great story. Because it kept me thinking throughout the rest of the week about it. And it really sat with me and it lasted with me. And often, like when you go to like a museum and you're looking at a portrait, I don't know what that painter wanted us to think or feel, but they made it in such a way that I'm able to look at it and connect to it in my own way. Um, yeah, I don't know.
I love so much what we said. My favorite thing so far is that the question about defining story um, so far has been so different. But I
Mm,
think the what makes it good has always hovered around this idea of like it evokes something emotional in you, like it
yeah,
makes you feel something. I like the idea of like stories in the feeling, right? Because we and I thought this the first moment you started talking about in the beginning about like things that focus around love, and I immediately wanted to say, yeah, I understand why we all want to hear it and absorb those contexts because it's one of the most indescribable things in the world, and so
yes,
of course we're going to use all avenues possible to try to describe something that nobody can describe fully, right? And we're just struggling to grab a piece of it. I love that, and I'm going to listen to your song because that sounds awesome. All right, penultimate question. So you've talked a lot about being a musician, singer, songwriter. So the first part is what format of storytelling are you most well versed in? I would assume it's that, but if it's something else, please feel free to surprise us. And then after doing that, the second part of this question is what is an avenue where you're maybe less exposed to, but you're interested in?
visual art. I am so interested. When I was a kid, yeah, I would say singing and songwriting is definitely my strong suit. What I've always come back to, because just to answer the first part of the question, yeah, I started as a kid, as many kids are put in piano lessons, and was a great foundation, but I never really circled back to it the way that I did songwriting. And so I think that's definitely my answer to the first bit. And then the second bit of your question, yeah, as a kid, I also was very drawn to cartooning as a visual medium. I just really always have loved something about the innate lightness and wittiness of a cartoonist's craft. They have to, like, you, it's the storytelling is so embedded in that medium, it's like, okay, what's the, yeah. So if I could go back and strengthen that skill, I totally would, because I think if I could just sit down with like a pen and a paper and sketch what I'm thinking, feeling, imagining, I think that would do a lot for these indescribable parts of my brain that you're talking about, like the way that, we want to express our feelings around love. It's so abstract. I would love to, I don't know how to visualize these thoughts. Like, my first album is called Tender Hearted, and I can write about that feeling of being tender in a song all day. You give me 12 hours, I'll fill it up with music on that subject. But I don't know how to visualize that. I don't know what that looks like. So that's a part of my brain where there's a huge question mark. And there's some, yeah, I know many great visual artists in my life who I'm constantly impressed by, because it's just funny how we're all given these different, I mean, kind of natural things that we gravitate towards, and that I can't really visualize things the way that I can hear them in my head. Do either of you have that like visual ability to like draw, or in any other kind of way?
Nope.
I can no, not particularly.
Yeah, it's a tough. I mean, I guess.
Yeah, I've always wanted. It's one of those things that I've actually. It's so ironic. The top two things that I've always wanted as an artist to be able to do so much better than I do is singing and drawing, and I
Mm,
bad at both of them.
man, it's such a conflicting feeling when you want to express yourself in a certain way and you're like, I don't
Yeah,
have the tools to do it.
I listen the so many times, and I've taken voice lessons before, and I sing all the time, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I so often find myself in my private moments processing emotions, singing, and in musical theater to take it to like what I actually have been trained to do. In musical theater, they talk about how the reason characters are singing is because the context of the moment, the stakes are so high, the emotions are so
Mm,
much that they cannot help but sing in that moment. Um, and then taking it a step further, when they're singing and dancing, they're heightened even more. So now they feel like they have to start dancing. At least that's what they teach you in musical theater history. But I wonder if, and it's just so funny because like the Joker movie is the second one is a musical. Like they sing so much in that movie, and it's I yeah, I'm struggling to express myself really well in this moment, so maybe I should start singing. But what I'm saying is that like I love the idea of coming to a medium of art because you can't comprehend what you're feeling in a moment.
I mean, so many people say that artists do the art they do because they have to, not
Right.
because they want to. It's like this,
Yes.
you can't control this feeling. I mean, the way that I write songs is I have like a million voice memo
Yeah.
recordings of me humming. Idea
Yeah.
number one, idea number two. Or the title of the voice memo is, "Hey, future Nica, listen to this part of this song. I'm thinking of this
I love
melody
that.
based on that." And it's like this long title
I
that I go
love
back
that.
to. And I have a notes on my notes app where it's called Thought Bubbles, and it's just
Hmm.
thought bubbles that I've written. And when I'm sitting down to write, I'll choose one, often, not always, but if
Yeah.
I'm struggling, I'll choose one and I'll build a story around it. But it's like this feeling of like I need to do it, and I sometimes wish I didn't need to, but I need to. So yeah, it
Yeah.
is very frustrating that when you want to express yourself in a different way. I love that though, that like they're singing
My
because they gotta.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's that's what my notes app is like two or three lines of dialogue between characters and no context. I'll be
Oh,
like
that's
sitting in my
great.
head and somebody will have said something to me, and then an hour later I thought of the perfect response, and I'm like, that's gonna go into a play or a book that I'm writing somewhere. I'm just gonna throw it in a. It's in a note on my Google Drive called Island of Misfit Writing. I just throw it
That's
in
Mm.
great.
there. Bigger letter. But what's funny, my older sister's also a singer songwriter, and her first album that she put on online out there on Spotify and all that jazz is called Voice Memos because it's all based around
Mm-hmm.
when she had a voice memo of something that
Yeah.
was happening, and so I think that's cool. We could talk about this part for forever, so I'll move it on to the final
Sure.
question, the bonus question that we didn't send you,
Yes.
because we talked about we've talked about how you define story. We've talked about stories that invoke emotional responses to you. We've talked about things that you're referencing, and you've talked a little bit about how you create stories with music. I mean, I love the just the brief snippet of you talking about how you're telling a story with the what note you're doing in the moment. Like I
Mm-hmm.
just love that. Um, so I'm going to ask you again to tell us what's your story, and if you had to tell your story, how would you do it artistically? And the conduit to this is you can say you would write a song,
I think
um,
I
but
think we said if you couldn't use your normal form of media, you
yeah,
had to use
but
something else.
yeah,
You don't have to do cartoon
Mm.
drawing. That might be tough, but if you're up for a challenge, you did say you're fascinated by it.
It's like a 80-page cartoon.
Chandler and I both. Actually, I don't know if
This
you said this, but I said like a
you
dance
you said a
piece.
dance piece. For me, why I
Yeah,
and I've probably said this in the intro, but I mentioned I think symphony or orchestra, a musical
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah,
musical
Mm.
yeah.
piece.
An orchestration. Yes.
What do you think that says, as I'm thinking of my answer? What do you think that says about like your story, that you see it as a symphony or you see it as a dance? Like, have you thought about the implication
For
there?
me,
If you listen to episode 0, we do talk
yeah.
about it.
Okay, there you go.
For me, well,
Plug,
to give you
plug,
more time
plug.
to think, for me, I think it's less telling of my story, and I think more evocative is probably the wrong word, and it's more telling of. I think for me, how I visualize my emotion, how I visualize how I
Mm-hmm.
process things, and some people may understand this, or everyone may think I'm absolutely psychotic when I think about symphony and orchestral style music and specifically telling my story through it. I visualize it and I see the music as like, I don't know, think rainbow, but crossing and melding and not actually bright colors, but I like see kind of the swells and the journey and the passage of time and everything that the music would do as if it was existing in 3D space. And I think that that's like a way that I think would be easiest to translate my emotion and my experience as opposed to
Mm.
trying to just tell you through a film, which would tell you what happened but would not express at all my process through it.
Right. It all goes back to emotion. I think I would do. I've I've always been really drawn to like films like Perfect Days, where there's a lot of the sound design in it are the sounds that you hear in daily life, and the shots are of him doing the things that him engaging with the things that he loves and that reflects who he is. So I think that on a similar note, like I think that I would want to create something like that where it's a mostly silent film, meaning not void of any sound, but void of like dialogue, just going through like my days and going through the things that I love. And I'm such a lover of little things, you know, I like all the things in my space and the things that I consume every day. I feel like they really make who I am. And so much wisdom is also gleaned in silence. And so I think if there's space and silence in a film about me and who I am, I think that would give like whoever's watching it time to absorb the feeling behind it. So I hope I articulated that in a way that, you know, is what I'm thinking.
I love that. I love that. As somebody who, you know, is a writer, actor, director, I love words. I love words, but at the same time, I have such an appreciation for utilizing those quieter moments because really that's truly, I think, when you find out you learn the most and feel the most. So yeah, that sounds great. I'd love to watch that movie.
And what a gorgeous question. You're really making me think outside of the box here.
It's drawing me back to, I can't remember where I heard this. Surely it wasn't. I was briefly a musician when I was in middle school. Took band class, played the clarinet for a year, then bass clarinet for 3, and then I gave it all up because I honestly got by that far without being able to actually read sheet music properly.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Or understanding scales and music theory. But I digress. Going back to, I don't remember where I heard this, but someone once told me the beauty in music isn't the notes you're playing or the rhythm you hear, but the silence in between them.
Yeah.
And that's what a musical phrase is. It's the pause you give before and after. In music, we talk a lot about punctuation. You're not seeing the comma that I wrote in my lyrics, but how are you hearing it? Well, it's through a pause. Before a shift in the melody, pause so the listener can process what you just said and get ready for a new moment. So
it's the syntax.
The syntax. People, it all comes back to syntax.
I think about Lin-Manuel Miranda talking about writing Hamilton and talking about the "Wait for It" song, where at the end of it he always goes, "I'm willing to," and he doesn't say it because he's waiting for the right moment to say the end of the phrase. Like there's so much of that I'm sure that if I broke down all my favorite songs, all of those things would be in it. But the beauty of songwriting for me is that like you don't have to know on a technical level that you dropped the notes down when you sang about flooding the basement, but you feel it.
You feel it. Yeah. And that's what counts, you know. People can get bogged down all day behind a desk studying about, you know, how to do it. But the more you just do it, the more you realize and you manifest what you're feeling. And then people feel it, you know. You don't always have to put name to what it is as long as you're experiencing it.
Well, there's no way we get better than that. So thanks everybody.
We're out. All right, see you guys next time.
No, Nica, thank you so much for joining us. This is an incredibly good conversation.
There is one thing that we can't end it on that. We do have one final order of business.
Gosh, I can't believe I forgot.
I can't believe you forgot.
The most important thing.
It's in the name, Adam.
Nica, this is the most important thing now. So she's also at a heart.
I feel you guys scheming.
No, you know.
No, so here's the thing.
What we're gonna. I think we.
You know what it is. We already told you. The thing is that you are in an impossible position because the breakfast we had from our last guest, Braxton, is Chandler's favorite breakfast. So you were in the impossible spot of having to give us what your go-to favorite breakfast is and hope that it gets anywhere near what Chandler rated breakfast.
Now, but before we get there, a little aside, I just want to talk a little bit of strategy and tactic here. There is one or two, and I'm not going to tell you the answers. So we're going to see how this play-by-play goes. There is tactically, in my head that I envision, only one type of answer you could possibly give to upset the balance that biscuits and gravy has deemed imbalanced on. There's this imbalance with B's and G's. You can't beat it.
B's and G's.
And it's tipping the scale in an unfair manner. There is only one possible strategy I could foresee. Let's see how this plays out. Adam, Nica, the floor is yours.
So you want to hear my favorite breakfast? I hear.
Yeah, what's yours? Yeah, so we're rank every
We are going to eat
episode.
it. We are going to make it and eat it.
Yeah, that's the idea, is that we're going to make it and eat it and rate
or
it at the top
if
of
it's
every
not
episode,
a make it, if it's like a McDonald's breakfast of something, we will go out and get
that's
it.
okay too. We're like so far everybody has described like how they make it, which is fine. But like if it really is like a McGriddle, whatever, that's great. I love McGriddles.
Yeah. Hey, road trip. Okay, so the success of my persuading you to enjoy this breakfast is dependent on where you get these ingredients. But I'm gonna let's try. You know, you can find these ingredients anywhere, but it really depends where you get it. So a common breakfast that my family eats, which is from Iran, and we're from the northwest of Iran, is a bread called Bad Betty, which again, I don't know if you're going to find it unless you're near a Persian market. I can send you how to spell it. But even if you just get kind of like a, let me look up like an equivalent. I think you might call it like a flatbread or something.
Okay.
And then some butter and some feta cheese. And then your favorite preserve or jam of choice on top. I usually go for like apricot or fig, but you really can't go wrong. People do any and everything, and I just kind of get whatever's in the fridge. So it's this combination of like, you get the nice, thick, chewy bread that you've just toasted, and then there's some salty feta, and then you get some sweetness of the jam at the very end. So I don't, the bread actually I'm realizing might be the hardest thing unless you're near a Persian market.
Sure.
But it's like a flatbread kind of situation. And I'll send you guys what it's called and all that good stuff. But
it looks like the closest Persian market to me is in Virginia. So that's a little drive, but
yeah.
Is that
right across the border?
Is that on the way or not on the way to maybe if you drove to, let's say, Philly?
There, I'll pick it up on the way, and then we make it together.
Or alternatively, it may not have to be. We could postpone the rating to make sure we get the authentic ingredients for you. I can bring
Sure.
No,
because I can shop where Nica shops if needed.
Yes,
That's a good point. That's a good point.
You can. I mean, again, if you get any kind of flatbread, you know, some feta cheese in your jam, and a cup of either black tea or coffee, it's going to be a really good time.
This is cool because this is not something that I would ever make for breakfast. It's not that I don't like, bread and jam or anything, but like the specific type of bread, putting feta cheese on there and preserved, like that's something I would never have for breakfast.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's cool. So far, we've only had things that I absolutely would have for breakfast before.
Yes.
So I think this is cool. I'm very excited.
Just
for
a
this
quick
one.
back.
Yeah, well, I was debating. I was like, oh, sorry, Chandler. I was debating. I was like, because this is actually my favorite breakfast. I eat it every single day. I was like, do I choose that or do I choose like my go-to when I don't have that? But we're going to go with that. I think that's a good answer.
If we check back in with the play-by-play real quick, I was going to wait till the outro, but because of the nature of this, and I want you to be able to hear successfully how you have tactically, not only were honest about what your actual favorite breakfast was, but you tactically used the one thing I could ever foresee untipping the balance, which is, like for me, and I could sound like an idiot here, and I could be totally wrong, but because of like my background and my childhood and upbringing, to me, B's and G's feels like a white culture thing, if there is ever any kind of like American sort of South culture.
There's American culture,
to suggest a breakfast that one, we would never have tried unless we met someone who shared it with us, to two, share something that is from your heritage or your culture. I'm not going to be able to compete it head to head with B's and G's. I can give it an honest rating, but I will never be able to say which one is best. It's not fair.
Hey, I think you might have to, but I understand.
Well, I could say which
people are going to want.
I could say what my favorite is, but knowing me and my background and my palate and what I'm used to, the overarching what is the best will go unnamed unless people go and try it for themselves, and maybe eventually we have a massive poll.
And if you want to hear how we liked it, you do have to listen to the next episode.
To the next one.
Time of that. Um, well, Nika, now I can thank you for being on the podcast. It's been a great episode. If there's anything that you want to plug, like social media, you just said that you're doing a new album. Like, if there's anything you
Hmm.
want to plug, you have the floor for that at the end of the interview.
Well, thank you both for your time. If you want to find anything about me, my Instagram, my TikTok, my Spotify, my Apple Music, my YouTube, everything everywhere is Nica Albertson. That's Nica Albertson. And feel free to shoot me a message. I'm always responding to my DMs and connecting with folks. Thank you guys.
Such a great artist thing. That's all of them are the same. That's like
Yeah, I'm
that's
just
such a that's such a person who works in the art industry
yeah.
thing to have. Is like they're all the same. You can't lose me.
You won't get confused. I
Mm.
promise. I hope.
All of mine are Adam Jeffrey Rossi except for my Gmail. It's Adam Jeffrey Rossi 2. But I also own the email address Adam Jeffrey Rossi. I had it when I was in high school, and it won't let me log in because I
You
don't
got
know
locked
the
out.
answer to the security question and I don't know the password, and nobody at Google will let me back in. So it exists and I own it, but I can't
Oh,
get into it.
wow. That is the biggest irony I've heard all month.
Yep,
That's so
yep.
sad.
Well, thank you again, Nika.
Thank you guys. I'll see you around.
All
So
right.
thank you to Nika for being on the episode. A very, very good conversation. We're gonna say that for every guest. So you,
Yeah, but this time it's actually true.
man, I
It
hope
will always
Braxton's
be true.
listening.
It will always be true,
Uh,
Braxton. It was true. It's true.
yeah, I love, and we said this in the interview. I love how a lot of the things hover around the same core, but there's always a very unique way that each person has of describing something. So I'm going to be thinking about the syntax of things a lot. Like I kept jokingly bringing it up, but that's because it's something that immediately clicked in my head of like, oh, that's right. I gravitate towards that stuff too, right? The perfect way to say something, right? And that comes from my acting and writing background, right? And I think about why I love Shakespeare so much is because it sounds so good, right? Like my favorite Shakespeare play is Much Ado About Nothing, and you could say, "Hey, I love you" to somebody, but in Much Ado About Nothing, he says, I do love nothing in the world so well as you. Is not that strange? And it's just like the perfect way to say that. I couldn't even try to describe it in a better way. And so the syntax of it just feels so nice. And I will be thinking about that in every piece of art that I absorb from
That's,
now on.
that's amazing. I think for me, like, it was kind of an eye-opening slash. It's more of a reminder than anything to look for the beats, look for the pauses,
That's good,
look
yeah.
for the silences. And I think not only in storytelling, but maybe me as a person as a whole in my life,
Hmm.
it's okay to let there be a pause. It's okay to
Yeah.
let there be a beat. And those silences are the most important when people can pause to not have to listen to what you're telling them, to feel what you're feeling or listen to what you're feeling.
That's also, I don't know, are you a Daredevil fan?
The comic book hero.
Well, yeah, Daredevil's my favorite superhero.
Mm-hmm.
And that Netflix series is just so amazing. But there's a line that he has in the first season where he says, like, you have to feel for what's not there as much as what is.
Yeah.
And talking about how he's mostly blind, right? So that ties in perfectly. And I think about that all the time about, tying it back to we had a conversation about love being indescribable, but like there's a Mr. Rogers quote from the documentary where they cut in him saying like everything is about love or the lack of it, and so when somebody is not loving, look for what's not there. What's not there is probably loving relationships in their life. So that's what's in the beat or the pause or the missing moment. That's a much more deeper way to explain it, though. You did, so
That
I'm
was
sorry.
of our episode. That was probably our first deep moment.
Deep moment. It's so funny. You were saying something that was like it was like a boat floating on the water, and I was like, I'm dragging this to the depths.
Deep moment. It's amazing. I think as far as like not just like themes and artistic and story like motifs about like silence and syntax, I think it's like something to do homework for next time almost is something else we're kind of
Sure.
talking about each time.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's easy. Perfect Days is something that
I'm gonna
I
yeah, I'm
love
gonna watch this movie.
A24. I'm absolutely going to watch this movie. And also realizing now that not only, oh, that's something cool, but like this is something that I can watch to see what someone else was saying about it and see what its impact is on me, but also to understand more about this person that we just talked to.
Yes, and just to clarify for our listeners slash viewers, I saw the TV Glow as the A24 movie. Perfect Days is another movie that she talked about, but I saw the TV Glow as the A24 movie. But both of which I'm going to
Gotcha.
watch. But I just want to, so people aren't confused. But
Yes, yes,
yes, I will
yes.
be watching both of those movies for sure. And I want to be listening to Nico's music
Absolutely. She is a
now.
fantastic artist.
Yeah,
I am ashamed to say that when I first met her, I checked out her music, and it is incredible, and I love it, and it's the kind of music that I like to listen to. I'm ashamed
yeah.
to say, due to the nature of my brain and its chemistry and the way it works, I for some reason have not listened to it in a while. But I am going to be making a playlist of my favorite artists, and she is going to be on
That's
that.
awesome.
And also, yeah, check out in the show notes in the description for this episode.
We could
In
drop a
case
link
you
to.
missed it, we'll at least drop a link to her Spotify. She'll have all of her socials that she mentioned, and we can put her tag that she uses cross platform. But we'll
Right.
also include a link to her Spotify. I'm not sure if she gets revenue from that, but go listen. If she does, then like just leave that on repeat when you go to work.
I did that for my sister when her album came out. I
Amazing.
don't think she made anything. It boosted her up a little
It's
bit.
the thought that
Uh,
counts.
yeah. Thanks for listening to the show, folks. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Tune into the next episode to hear how we rank Nika's breakfast. And the most important thing to do between the end of this episode and the next thing you do is to tag
Tag
Brandon
Brandon
Sanderson.
Sanderson. All right. Well, Adam, we'll see you in the next episode.
But in the
I don't know.
meantime,
It's time for lunch.